You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. Conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their missions through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media.
Jenny, today's topic, 10 questions about Google ad grants for nonprofits. So I'm thinking like that very first episode we did, you put yourself in the job of a brand new marketing director at a nonprofit attraction, and you kind of had your 30, 60, 90-day plan, but we didn't really talk about like where we're at with the organization's Google ad grants. So I'm happy to do this episode now.
Yeah. We talked about the importance of owning your own platforms, including Google, right? And I think this is an extension of that. But today we're going to dive deep into the specific account for Google ad grants for nonprofits.
Yeah. And I think, we kind of did a little bit of a poll. So, there's some folks that are doing it, crushing it, maximizing the entire grant. Some folks are kind of in the middle and some folks just aren't doing it. So I think for anybody in our audience, whether you're doing it, not doing it, or somewhere in the middle, there's going to be some takeaways on this episode.
Yeah, let's talk about those poll results. So super unscientific poll that we did with our network, but we talked to or reached out to several zoos, aquariums, gardens, and museums that are registered nonprofits to just ask, are you using the Google ad grant for nonprofits? And I think that from those results, we got about 70% or so saying, yes, we're familiar, we're using it. So, 30% are not actually doing it. And I think a lot of the things that came up for the ones that aren't doing it is either, well, what is it? Or I've heard about it, but we just don't have anybody who can manage it. Right. So that was pretty common to hear. But kind of going back to the ones that are doing it, about half of the ones that we talked to that were doing it did admit that they weren't really maximizing it. So, they, either struggled with kind of having a person in-house that really understood how to manage paid search campaigns, or maybe the agency that they were working with wasn't great at managing. They were great at the paid account, but not the grant account. And then I think some of the other things that we kind of took away from that was just maybe they're doing it, but they're just not maximizing it, right? So they can't get it to spend to that full $10,000 a month that Google is actually providing for nonprofits. And this is super common even outside of the attraction space. So I think as a whole, like the average amount that nonprofits spend is like $300 of the $10,000 per month available. We heard a little bit higher than that for nonprofit attractions. We heard about $3,000 a month was what they were getting from it. But yeah, that really kind of sparked how we set up today's episode was how can we help nonprofit attractions spend and maximize this full $10,000 a month? And really kind of give you a checklist or kind of what to focus on in order to get the best out of it.
Well, you kind of just touched on a few of the details there, but let's start with question number one. What is Google Ad Grants? What is this program?
Yeah, so any registered 501c3 that is outside of healthcare and education is able to get this grant from Google. So Google has an ad grant that's available just for paid search. It's not for YouTube. It's not for display, but just paid search. They will give you up to $10,000 a month in free money, right? It's, you've got to sign up for it. You have to get approved, but it's a pretty simple process. And then you just have to start managing your campaigns in Google.
And just to be clear, it's not like you get a check for $10,000, but it's $10,000 a month in free advertising solely in the search platform, correct?
Correct. And it's separate from a paid account. So it's not like, oh, if you go over $10,000, they're going to send you a bill. If you go over $10,000, pat yourself on the back because you've absolutely maximized the grant. But it's absolutely free. There's never an invoice for it, which is great.
And you're saying some of the folks that have tried it or are actively running it, the roadblock or kind of the miss here is they're not maximizing that full $10,000. They're getting maybe $1,000 or $3,000 a month of free advertising to spend. And what we're trying to do is take advantage of this program completely.
Correct. Yep.
Got it. Okay. So question number 2 on the list here. What's the catch? Why is Google doing this?
Yeah. So I think this is actually something we heard a lot, like, for the ones that weren't doing it, it was really like, I mean, if it's free, it's not really worth it, right? And I think I get why people might think that, but that's unfortunate because it is, it's Google, right? This is a legit ad platform. It's, we all know, I think if you run any paid media, that Google is, most likely, or Google probably is most likely already on your plans. But when I think about like, okay, well, what's the catch? Like, what's Google trying to get from me? I mean, I would say they're trying to get you to use their platform, right? They want you to see that this is a successful ad platform. And I think especially for those that maybe aren't spending much in paid media, this might be their first, chance to be able to do some paid advertising for their nonprofit. And so Google wants you to know how to do it, right? They want you to know how to use their platform. They're giving you this money to teach you and train you on their platform. And once you start getting results from it, or once you start maximizing those dollars, you might say, okay, let's actually put some paid dollars behind this, right? Or, we want a larger share of these keywords that are actually driving conversions for us. Let's spend some more money against this. Or we want to test out YouTube with a similar strategy, right? So I think this gotcha that everyone's afraid of is really just training to try to get you to spend more money, but there's no gotcha as in we're going to trick you into spending more money. So I would say don't be intimidated by that, but yeah, think of it as like a training program for advertising for Google.
And just to be crystal clear, if I spend or you get over that $10,000 a month threshold, it's not like I'm going to get a bill. Like I spent $11,000 in quote unquote free money or grant money. Google's not going to send me $1,000 bill. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. If you go over that amount, then that just means that you're doing an excellent job of managing your campaign, and Google is allowing you to continue spending past it.
Yeah. And I like what you said about Google. I mean, kind of the running joke that I've always had being a media rep was no marketing director ever got fired by putting Google on the plan. I mean, this is
exactly.
Yeah. All right. So question number 3, can I use the free grant ad dollars to sell tickets?
Yeah, this was another topic that came up. So of those that were using the ad grant campaign, a lot said, but it can't support tickets. And so I only run a mission message there. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why some aren't maximizing it, because they do think that they're limited in what they can run. You can, in fact, use this ad grant campaign or fund to drive ticket sales as long as those ticket sales support your mission. So some of the recommendations are things like making sure on your ticket page that you have something that says, these proceeds support, our mission. Put your mission statement on that ticket sale page. But if you can run an ad. Think about running an ad for like a branded campaign. Somebody searches for your zoo, and rather than your ad coming up and saying, our mission is to, et cetera, you can put in buy a membership for $99 a year, right? So that's absolutely acceptable. You can drive them to that ticket page where it tells them these tickets support our membership. I mean, ticketed revenue is a huge, one of the biggest, it's fundraising and ticketed revenue, right? In terms of being able to raise money to support your mission, support your cause. So you can absolutely drive membership, ticket sales, events, all of that can be done under this. But we're going to dive into some strategies between how to do that best with a grant campaign and a paid campaign.
Yeah. So these next couple questions I have, they're a little bit more nitty gritty, kind of in the weeds or in the platform, if you will. So we're going to bring in Natalie James. She is our resident expert on Google search here at Attend. And Jenny, like a little background on Natalie?
Yeah, so Natalie's got, I think, almost 15 years of experience working in digital media, specifically in managing paid search campaigns. So that's both grant campaigns for nonprofits as well as paid campaigns, and really understanding how to balance the two of those.
All right, so question number 4, Natalie, this one's for you. You've got like 6 rules that you use to ensure that your campaigns are compliant within the Google Ad Grants program. What are those 6 rules?
Yeah, I'll just give you a numbered list if that works. So rule number 1, you have to maintain a CTR of 5%. 2, you must have 2 ad groups. 3, you must have 2 keywords. 4, you must have 2 site links in those ad groups. 5, you must not go after competitive terms like your competitors in the market. And 6, you cannot have single keyword ads in the ads and the ad groups.
All right. That was a lot. For our listeners out there, we do have a checklist on our site, attend.media. To scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a link that says Google Ad Grants checklist. But all right, Natalie, let's get nerdy. Let's go through this. You said number 1, a minimum of a 5% click-through rate. Can you kind of talk about that? What are some ways we can make that happen?
Yeah, so obviously the biggest one is going to be aligning your ad copy with keywords, making sure that the keywords you're going after is relevant to what you're offering and that aligns with the ad copy. Trying to maybe beat the system and going after really broad or misaligned keywords can bring that CTR down. So really relevancy is going to be the biggest play for that CTR.
And why would Google make that rule? I don't know. It's free money. Why are they putting all these strings attached to it? Yeah,
at the end of the day, I think Google's stake in it all is a user experience. So that's just one way to really check to make sure that, again, it's relevant to what somebody's searching for. And that's kind of like the bare minimum would be that CTR indicating that somebody's interested in what we're offering.
That makes sense. All right. Number 2 ad groups.
Yeah. So again, I think this comes back to just like a best practice standard. So I think historically people have probably, like you said, looked at it as free money and will just upload a ton of keywords into one ad group. And then by doing so, they no longer have that relevancy component. Really, you want to break up your ad groups by kind of keyword grouping, then align copy and landing page to that. And this is just like a very soft way of Google saying, hey, you need to make sure that you're following best practices and setting up things according to what's going to provide the best user experience.
All right. So you guys, can you give me an example of what that will look like?
So yeah, ad group 1 is zoo, maybe really relevant to like ticket sales and things. And maybe ad group 2 or a totally different campaign, but completely different from the first one. It goes after like volunteering opportunities. And those two, if you would imagine your site structure, would have 2 very different landing pages. So if you wanted them to be separate, that's kind of where that would come from.
I love that because I don't think I'm going to be spending paid dollars on something like volunteering, but volunteer or donate or something like that. That'd be a great way to spend this grant dollars.
Absolutely.
All right. Number 3, 2 ads per group.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to that best practice. So having 2 variations in your ad groups, allows for A/B testing, allows Google then to optimize maybe which one they think is going to provide the most useful information to the user. And that, again, just bare minimum standards. It's something that anybody in the industry would expect to have in their account structure.
Yeah, that's kind of like paid search 101. Let the Google machine do its thing, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Number 4, 2 site link extensions per ad. Is that correct?
Yeah. So site links, for those who are not familiar, think of it as like additional buttons on your ad to click through to sub pages of your site that a user who is searching for that may find more useful than just a standard ad click. Examples could be like hours, locations, menu items, just like anything more direct that a user would have to take a couple clicks to get to on your site. This is just like a direct path to get a user there. And again, best practices to have on any campaign setup.
Number 5, no competitive keywords.
Yeah, I think Google Grant is just there for a safe space, not looking to create a bunch of competition in out of it. So that's just like a rule they've set to keep people from trying to cannibalize a competitor in the market from both a paid and grant standpoint.
Okay. And then number 6, no single keywords.
Yeah. Again, I think historically people, when they look at it for free money, they would do very broad targeting because they're trying to just get volume there. And it's not going to be what benefits the end user. So for an example, a single keyword would be event, where we would recommend doing events near me, event in X zip code, event in X city. Obviously those keywords that have more actual words in them show a lot more intent, higher relevancy to what we're offering, and should be the keywords we're going after. And so Google has created that rule to keep people from just stuffing a bunch of single keywords to get volume.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about that. I think too, probably the other thing that comes to mind is I'm a zoo, so I'm going to build a campaign and I'm going to just put zoo in my campaign as my keyword. And then I'm just going to do all broad match and then easy peasy. I don't have to touch my campaign because everything's going to be so relevant. So I got to imagine there's someone out there who's done that as well. And I mean, all of this that you're saying just comes back to, what Ryan, you and I were talking about earlier, which is what's the catch? Google is giving you this money to learn how to run the platform, right? And they want you to follow their best practices. And I guess, Natalie, for you, I mean, these rules that you just went through are basics, right? So if you're running a campaign, an ad grant campaign for a nonprofit, I got to imagine you have well over 2 ad groups, well over 2 keywords, well over, a 5% click-through rate. So if you've got any kind of examples that you can share across the board for maybe, a similar campaign, I think that'd be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think you would treat this like you would treat any other platform, and you really want it to cover like a 360 of your business. So like I mentioned before, it would be everything from volunteering hours to ticket sales to donations, and really, trying to maximize, everything that you are able to capture that full 10K that would come from that. And I think trying to limit that, you'll probably see that you won't spend anywhere close to the full allotted budget.
Well, that kind of goes into question number 5. So what are some other strategies, some tactics that we can do to maximize that grant money?
Yeah, I think with grant, it's important to know that with a paid campaign and with limited budgets that we know some nonprofits have, you're really prioritizing towards that end goal, which, usually is ticket sales. But with the grant money, I think it's okay to look back and say, how can I help support my overall business, and how can I help support maybe my other channels? So things that we see do really well is like a lead collection, maybe somebody who would be interested in, you can, tell them why they want to give you their contact information, like an email, and then you can use that for like channel marketing and maybe in social at a later date when really you are trying to push them to that hard selling point. But I would definitely look at grants from like a funnel perspective, as well as like an expansion of your current paid efforts. So again, limit budgets, you're really focusing on that core market, and maybe it's a drive market, but we would look at Google grants to maybe look at expanding what your current paid efforts aren't able to reach.
And then, I'm also thinking like, why not just put, I guess what we would call in the search world, branded keywords out there. So that would be my actual name of my entity. Like, this seems like a good place to put branded keywords in this grant dollar campaign, right? Yeah.
I mean, depending on what you need to cover and stuff, I think branded keywords has a place in both paid and non-paid. Again, I think it just would depend on priority and everything. And if you have big competitors in the market, it's a great opportunity to pull in some branded.
Right. So maybe if you've got kind of a big event that you need to prioritize, and you have to ensure that you do not lose anyone during that event, you might want to put your branded keywords in your paid. But maybe throughout the rest of the year, you're okay having that branded in your grant campaign, or you could have it in both still, because it's separate auctions, right? You're not bidding against yourself when you have those words in your grant campaign versus your paid campaign. But I also think about too with the branded is just often you're probably looking at doing it with or you're looking at bidding on keywords that are just in your market because you don't have this huge budget. But a branded campaign could absolutely be used in the grant account as a U.S. targeted approach, right? So if someone from California is looking at a zoo in Orlando or in Florida, we can make sure that we're still relevant for it, right? So that branded keyword could be opened up to the U.S. instead of just to your DMA.
Yeah, and I think that supports kind of that statement I made about using grants for like a funnel approach. So maybe when we look at somebody out of market searching for brand, where we would consider them in the funnel is definitely like awareness, maybe their trip planning in the future, things like that. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, if I'm doing a Google search for Jacksonville Zoo, I'm fairly confident that Jacksonville Zoo's SEO is going to give me that top listing, but why not just go ahead and throw that paid or that, that grant ad on there? Maybe that's like a sneaky way to bump up my CTR, making sure I'm hitting that 5% threshold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I have on our sheet here, it's like tracking conversions. And I think that helps within the grant program as a whole. Like Google likes that, right?
Yeah, it's not a full hard must have, but it's definitely a very, very, very encouraged setup. And I would argue that there's no reason to not break out and fully flush out your conversion tracking and website tracking in both your paid and grant. So then you know really exactly what you're getting for your time, your effort, your money, or the grant money, and then where do you prioritize your paid? It's like a full picture of your media dollars, even if they're not necessarily coming out of your paid efforts.
Yeah, I like that. I think one of the philosophies we have here is you manage what you measure. And this episode's kind of about maybe some organizations not maximizing that grant. Well, maybe if there was a way I could see on a report somewhere like, heck, we sold X amount of tickets, or we got this amount of downloads, or we got this amount of email, whatever it may be, we can get a little bit more excited on putting that extra effort into getting more and more of this quote unquote free money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And not just conversion tracking, but also like UTMs and things like that. So making sure when you're looking at GA4, you may not see like direct revenue instantly in the platform, but you could then pull in your site analytics and kind of look at quality of traffic as it comes from the paid versus grant efforts, and really start to make decisions on where it kind of fits in the mix.
You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast, conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their mission through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media. Attend Media is a media planning and buying agency specializing in zoos, aquariums, gardens, and museums. For more information, please visit attend.media. Now, back to Ryan and Jenny.
All right, so we've gone through 5 of our 10 questions about the Google Ad Grants. So, what is it? Yes, it's available. If you're listening to this, you're a 50C3, you are good to go. Number 2, kind of what is the catch? Well, Google just wants you to play by their rules in hopes that you will spend money with them down the road, but there's no obligation to spend $1. Number 3, can you use the grant to sell tickets? Yes, absolutely. Number 4, Natalie ran through the 6 rules that she has to help your campaign remain compliant within the Google Ad Grants. And once again, there's a checklist on our website, attend.media. Number 5, we talked about some strategies to expand and maximize that $10,000 a month grant, specifically using branded keywords, which is just the name of your organization or your attraction, going outside of your market, and then tracking conversions. So number 6, Natalie, can these grant dollars like completely replace my paid dollars? I'm thinking, hey, I'm spending $5,000 a month on paid search. I'm going to get this grant. I can just move my $5,000 to go buy a billboard or something.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, we would never recommend pulling your paid search efforts in lieu of because you've, have a Google grant. They're in 2 separate auctions, actually. So the grant actually shows up below the main paid one. So if you're really trying to drive paid search in your marketing mix, I would definitely keep paid there. Would definitely not exclude it just because you have a Google.
So you're kind of saying like, if we were bidding against Jacksonville Zoo, for example, the paid ad would be prioritized by Google versus the grant ad. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And it also limits your impression share as well when you use the Google grant. So think about something like a big event, a big priority event. Like you definitely want to put paid efforts behind those just because you're not going to be able to do everything exactly as you want to with a grant and compared to the paid campaign.
Got it. Do you kind of have any strategies or tricks if I was running my grant dollars and my paid dollars kind of side by side? How would you do that?
Yeah. Again, I think the word that comes to mind is extension. So it could be a geographic extension that your paid efforts currently aren't able to cover, knowing that like really that 2-hour drive market is it the max that your marketing budget supports. So what does that look from maybe like a fly market or a little bit larger outside of that? If you ever were to analyze your campaign spend, you may see that it shuts off a little early, right? Like you don't have the budget to fully support a 12 or 24 hour daily spending limit. So what does that day part schedule look like? Does it look like your paid efforts run up until like maybe 4 p.m. and then you would set an ad schedule to start your Google grant, at like maybe like 4:15, 4:30 to pick up kind of where that where the paid efforts are not carrying throughout the full day.
Ooh, I like that. So day part, set your paid campaign to run during the busiest times and then turn it off and get the free money, air quote free money to run kind of in the off hours. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah. And I don't know that you have to actually turn off your paid campaign. It's just going to run out of budget. Google spends on a daily average budget and it fluctuates, but you'll probably notice if you were to look at like your clicks by hour, you'll probably see like a what we call like a bell curve, and it probably drops off when you've exhausted that budget after you've started to see like a large click volume. But you could do a hard schedule if needed.
All right, number 7, what should we do if we're not spending that full 10,000? Jenny kind of talked about the average is about 3,000. What are some ideas to maximize that?
Yeah, I would go back to the drawing board and again, making sure you're doing like a full 360 of the business. Again, looking at that funnel. So are you really only promoting, visitation? Like really, what else could we support our marketing efforts with? And I discussed it earlier, but like an email campaign, like trying to collect people's first party information to cross-reference there. And then those donations, the volunteer hours, supporting big events, like just making sure, again, that best practice that you have campaigns and ad groups all set up for everything across your business.
Yeah, is there like a minimum of time that I should be spending on this? I'm thinking, this is an effort thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no set standard minimum hours that you really have to spend or need to spend, but at once a month you do have to check in and make an optimization to the account. That is something that Google is wanting you to do in order to stay compliant as well. But I would say if you're taking it serious and you really want to maximize the 10K, you'll probably be doing a lot more of that because you have the conversion data set up and you're going to be making optimizations just as you would to your paid campaign. And then for those who are just getting started, maybe there's a little bit more effort and hours put into building out and fully, creating this account before it becomes like a well-oiled engine and then can kind of run itself where you don't have as much levers to pull.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Google wants you in this account, working on this account at all times. So even if you get it up and running after the first couple of months and everything seems smooth, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to touch it anymore. It's going to want you to go in and add new keywords. It's going to want you to go in and add new ad groups. It's going to want you to go in and shut off keywords that aren't performing, right? So there's always something you have to be doing to it. And Google's going to reward you or ding you for it if you're not in there making enough changes to that campaign.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, Google tells you what it wants to do. I mean, sometimes its recommendations are a little oddball, but clearing that bell for those folks that are in the platform on a daily or weekly basis, like clicking those notifications and checking that box, or once again, clearing that bell to be doing things like adding more keywords or ad groups. I think that's a pretty safe way to stay compliant. All right. So what happens if I get canceled? Question number 8. We've gotten booted out of the Google Ad Grants program. Is there any way back into the good graces of Google?
Yeah. Like all Google support, maybe it can be a little difficult and trying at times, but you can. There's a form online that you can go through and resubmit to try and get your active status back for the Google grant. But first, you want to go through and make sure that you've went ahead and made your account fully compliant. Because if you don't, that's just going to really delay the process and slow it up. So definitely step one would be to get your account compliant, make sure there's no single keywords, there's no competitors. Maybe it's a restructure, like an optimization, because you're just not hitting that 5%. And then submitting that form to apply for that in good standing status.
Got it. So there's actually like a form, like rejected Google ad grants, people, click here.
Yep.
All right. What about Bing? Are they offering a grant program, or Microsoft advertising, I should say?
Yep. Just like Google, they have, the same kind of offering to the nonprofits. It's a little bit less. So the first tier, I believe, starts at $1,000. But if you want to get more, you have to spend more. So that's a big difference between search from Google and Bing, is that in theory, you could have a Google grant without a paid one, but with Bing, it's in the same account. And to grow and become eligible for more spend, you actually have to put your paid dollars behind it. So I think if you spend $800 a month, then you're eligible for up to $3,000 of grant money.
Got it. So a little bit more strings attached with Microsoft advertising. Okay. All right. Question number 10. I love to put on my marketing director hat here. It's like, all right, free money, Google, who doesn't want that? But what is this really going to cost me? I'm thinking all the stuff we've talked about today, this is some effort. This is some time.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think there's like hard costs outside of what you would have to pay for Bing. It's really just time and effort and what it means to you. And the biggest, I guess, tip I could give is if you treat it right, it'll treat you right. So if you treat it just like you do your paid accounts, and you set up the conversion tracking and you set up campaigns in a very strategic way with the 2 site links at minimum, you check all those boxes, you'll be able to understand kind of how it's impacting your overall business, whether it's from, how many new email signups are we getting, to even like ticket sales. Is it impacting that? So no hard costs, but like, what does it mean to you? Is kind of where that value stands.
Yeah. And maybe, if you don't have that search expert internally, which I know a lot of teams don't, the cost to you, the investment maybe isn't your internal team's time, but the time of someone else that you will need to pay for. Right. So, just from talking with different nonprofit attractions, kind of what we've heard is, I think some of the roadblocks that they've run into is if they're working with like a digital vendor or agency that's commission based. Well, this is $0. So how do I take commission off of it? So they don't want to manage it. Or they move the grant campaign to someone who maybe isn't as familiar with how to utilize that grant campaign. So it doesn't get as much attention as the paid campaign, and they're not maximizing it anymore. So I think those are just things to think through. Make sure that if you're hiring someone specifically to help you manage the grant campaign, ideally it's someone who understands grant campaigns and paid campaigns that can help support both. But I know that's kind of one of the challenges that we've heard from speaking with several nonprofit attractions in this space.
All right, so I've got some action steps to take here. Let's fire through these. So if you're not doing it, we're saying, hey, go do it right now, right? But from this conversation, it's not just like set it and forget it. I'm going to, spend an hour in there. There's a little bit more to it. So, Jenny, we kind of have to have a plan in place before we go sign up, get the Google ad grants, or we might be in Google ad grant jail, which we don't want to be in. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you've got 3 months to be compliant once you get started. So you definitely don't want to get excited, go get it started, get in it week 1, and then all of a sudden 3 months go by and you haven't looked at it again. And now you're not hitting that compliancy list. So yeah, put it on your list to think about, but hold off on maybe pulling or pushing the button on it until you know who's going to do it for you.
I know we were talking to an attraction. I thought they had a pretty interesting take on it. They made this part of the job description for their marketing coordinator or digital. I forgot the role exactly, but that was part of the job description moving forward for that role.
Yeah, they said that it was always just kind of overlooked internally when they had it as part of their internal team's responsibilities. So it was like a digital manager that they had that they eventually just said, this is part of your role. This is what you're going to have to do. This is what you're going to have to learn. And I think, anytime you outline that, then again, if it's part of their review, right, they're going to do a good job on it. So I think just making sure it's getting the credit that it deserves or the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, that's what we were saying when we say have a plan. Okay, so number 2, if you are doing it, but you're not maximizing it, and that's kind of where the biggest group of this falls, we do have the checklist on our site, attend.media. But Jenny, any more thoughts just besides more time?
Yeah, I mean, you can always have somebody come in and maybe look at it from an audit perspective if that's helpful. If maybe you're not looking at completely outsourcing it, or you don't have someone who's already managing your paid, that would take on your grant campaign as well too. So if you feel like this is something that you're just not able to maintain internally anymore, that's a good option. But yeah, I think, again, if you're not willing to put in the time, you're just not going to get it's not going to give you what you are hoping to get. And I think that's kind of one of the frustrations we've heard from a lot of people.
And I like this third one, like we're all agency people. So I think this speaks to us. So if you are doing it, you are getting close to that 10,000 per month. We're saying document the process. Yeah.
Well, pat yourself on the back if you're getting the full 10K. So you're doing a great job. But yeah, I mean, agency side, client side, I mean, we all know that not everyone lasts on your team forever. So just make sure you're documenting. And I think the biggest thing is make sure everyone knows how to get into this account, right? Like have it documented. This is the login information for the Google ad grant, because it might not, it's not going to be in the same campaign as your paid is going to be. And again, you might have somebody else managing your paid and not your grant. So document how to get in, document the changes that you make to it. You can take a video of kind of some of the common things that you go, a screen video or screen mirror of what you're doing in the account for 5 minutes. But I think any documentation that you can have on it to share with the next person, versus relying on, someone to keep it in their mind of, or to only be in their head of how to get into the account, we know is never the best way to do it.
Natalie, Jenny, thank you very much.
And thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. If you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit our website at marketingattractionspodcast.com.